Hello, folks. Today I'm just responding quite briefly to something I've seen in Planet Rugby, an article by rugby journalist James Weil on comments by David Campo, the famous Australian rugby wing, who played for the Wallabies many times with distinction. And I think I'll first bring up the article so that we can talk about it. Here we go. There we are. So there's the title: David Campese exclusive. Wallabies legend calls for simplicity after unedifying Six Nations controversy, or controversy, if you really must. Okay, so this is Finn Russell arguing over Scotland's non-try against France. And that it's about the two recent French games against Scotland and Italy. What can rugby do to remove points of contention and simplify? I think that means simplify, not simply, an incredibly complex game. So here's what Campo's saying. It's quite interesting that if you go back in time, because the amateur game made things very easy, you've never had any controversies like these we get now, because so much complication has been added with the TMO, slow-mo impact replays, and the intense scrutiny of social and traditional media. Campese said, well, he's absolutely spot on there. I mean, no one plays rugby in slow motion. Well, indeed not. You can't go and show slow motion tackles or impacts, as they'll look a lot worse than the actual real-time incident, and I believe that's creating an issue. It certainly is. And of course, for those who want rugby stopped in schools and whatever, of course, it's great ammunition, isn't it? Entertainment business. World Rugby have to realize we are in the entertainment space, and in that business, if you don't entertain in a simple and compelling way, especially in countries like Australia, where we have 4 football codes competing for eyeballs, you're toast. Yeah. It's an entertainment business sport, isn't it? When it goes professional, and rugby is no exception there. People go elsewhere, and that's not good for us in Australia. I believe New Zealand is struggling too with the competition from American football and basketball. There's more availability of choice for the watcher now, and I just think that we need to entertain to get those fans to watch them today. And as part of that, I think the laws are too complicated. Well, I completely agree with that. So the Scottish voices still frustrated about the closing moments of the Six Nations match against France, where it looked for all money that Sam Skinner had crossed the line and touched down. Campese believes that the complexity of the law and the communication between TMO and on-field team relies too much on protocol over common sense. I don't think there's many that don't believe that Skinner didn't score, and I was amazed at the verbal oscillations between the TMO and the on-pitch team. The first shout was, yes, try. Then the TMO changed his mind and the referee interjected, but this was all down to fulfilling the protocols of the questions asked for World Rugby, he said. At no point was there any application of common sense or rugby logic. We ended up with a protracted debate that was unedifying and took away from the drama of those wonderful last few minutes. For me, the referee needed to take some more responsibility there, and I think that it's easy to abdicate the on-field call for the opinion of someone standing miles away watching a screen. As an official, you're a meter away from the action, and every bit of rugby logic told us that was a score. And then he talks about the France-Italy game, Italy penalty. You then get the chaotic scenario around later with Italy and the tea situation. First, the field was littered with water boys, so-called, in inverted commas, and this is becoming a far too regular occurrence. Get rid of them off the pitch. The ref was blindsided at one point because of one of the carriers, and that didn't assist him. Although I want to caveat this by saying Christoph Ridley had an exceptionally good game outside of those last moments. We then end up with shot clock pressure and a controversy about the charge down, two things that can easily be removed from the game. We talk about attracting new watchers to the sport. Imagine telling your mum that there's different charge down situations for a penalty or a conversion. Indeed. Just make it the same for both, one way or the other, and remove complexity from the situation. With regard to the shot clock, again, we're adding another law in where you don't need one. Simplicity is all. Personally, I'd allow the charge for both a penalty and a conversion. It adds drama. People talk about the Cheslin Colby moment against Thomas Ramos in the France-South Africa match. It was theatre and very intelligent rugby from Colby, who clearly knew Ramos's routine from playing with him at Toulouse and against him with Toulon. But by allowing it for both, you simplify the laws, which is what we need to do. Let's get consistency into the advantage laws too. Take the mum analogy again. How do you explain an endless advantage in a 22 that we see regularly over a 2 or 3 phase advantage, the norm in your own half? Make it simple, 3 phases and any advantage is over, but allow the player in possession to call for his own advantage if they want it over and above play on, job done. Although Campese is a man for simplicity, as a keen cricket fan, he also recognises the drama that reviews bring in cricket. With so many marginals seen in rugby now, he believes that the TMO's focus should be on foul play, but that a captain's review could be a compelling addition to the laws. Now, this is where I really think it's very interesting what he's saying. Whilst I do want simplicity in the laws overall, I also want entertainment, and I feel rather than letting TMOs call marginals all the time, a captain's review, 2 per match, would add to the drama and be relatively clear for the fans to understand. Again, the 3-phase rule applies. That's as far as you'd want to go back. But I would like to see the challenge available at test level. So like tennis, yeah? So you can have challenges, but from the captain in the case of rugby. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Lastly, whilst we all want to see scrummaging and we all value the wonderful ethos of rugby to offer so many sizes and shapes of people to play the game, let's simplify the scrum offences. For me, remove all penalty offences until the ball is in. And after that, once the halfback or 8 touches the ball, all scrum penalty offences are over. Offside by the other halfback is not a scrum offence. It's quite ridiculous that a marginal binding problem will give the same offence outcome as a clothesline tackle. And I, like many, am bored senseless with seeing endless resets, endless scrum penalties, and no emphasis on restarting the game. Free kick the first offence and crack on. That's how you get momentum into the game and stop the scrum snorefest that blight the game. Yes, well, that's all definitely food for thought. And I like what he's saying, particularly about reducing the role of the TMO. I wonder if the TMO is even necessary. I suppose it might be necessary for foul play. You could have an argument there, perhaps. But why can't the referee just say, "Could you show me that again on the big screen?" And then the referee, possibly with the assistance of the assistant referees, could decide on foul play as well. I think we need to restore the referee to his, as it were, rightful place, or the one I consider his rightful place, which is at the center of the game as the sole arbiter of fact and law. I think really to have a situation where a TMO says, "Oh yes, it's a try," and then he changes his mind. I mean, it's just complete nonsense, and it was very unfair in the France-Scotland game. Well, that's just one of the cases, but overall simplify the game because it is in huge competition with all these other sports, especially in a place like Australia. And I can't help noticing that what appears to be the growth area of the sport at the moment is sevens rugby, which is basically much simpler. It's shorter as well, which it's easier to digest in short 7-minute periods. So that, I think, is the secret of why sevens is becoming more and more popular. And of course, you can get a carnival atmosphere going, which you can't really do with a full-on test match or international game, which lasts for 80 minutes. Not at least in the same way. So really, I just want to back up what Campo is saying here. I think it's really important. I mean, rugby really has to look at itself and think, how can we get more people interested in the game? And I think simplifying it is the key. It's very frustrating, even for people who feel that they know the game quite well, as I do. Sometimes I can't understand a decision, or there's some obscure law which is being applied, or possibly there's even some nonsense, nonsensical decision by a referee as well. So it all happens. And I think it really is a bit of a blight on the game. So let's simplify the game, put the referee back at the center of the game as the chief decider of what's law and what is fact, what happened. And I think it'll be a better game in future. Thank you very much. That's all I've got to say now. Cheers. Bye.